The Biography of Martin Luther King. On a Saturday morning in 1929, Martin Luther King was born in the South of the United States of America. He had a brother and a sister, and his family was quite wealthy. One day, when he was 6, Martin went out to play at his friend's house. His friend's mother looked at him strangely and said to him, "You boys are old enough for school now. You can't play here anymore. Go away." Martin was very upset and ran home. "Why?" he asked his mother. "Can't I play with my friend anymore?" His mother held him close and explained, "Some white people are made to think that they are better than black people. You are as good as anyone else, and don't you ever forget that." Martin began to notice signs that read, "No colored allowed, whites only." He learned from his parents that those signs meant that black children had to go to schools that were shabby. They meant that black people could not eat where white people ate. He learned also that black people had to sit at the back of the bus. One day, on a shopping trip, he raced to a lift. It had a beautiful door and shiny buttons he could push. "Let's use this one," he said to his mother. "Shh," she said to him. "This one is not for us. We must use that one." She pointed to an ugly old lift. This made Martin unhappy. Martin's parents sent him to a good school. He was very clever and finished school 3 years earlier than usual. Then he went to university. He made many good friends there and worked hard. He also loved clothes. "Looking great as usual, Martin," they said to him. One summer, he took a holiday job in Northern City, a long way away from home. Here there were no signs saying whites only, no colored. Martin felt happy. He decided that he wanted black people to be treated the same as white people all over America. He decided to become a preacher when he left university in a church. He would preach for a change in the laws. After he passed his degree, Martin went to study religion. He also thought about ways to change the unfair laws against black people. He said, "I'll organize marches. I'll fight for freedom." In 1951, Martin graduated from college with the highest grades in his year. His parents gave him a brand new car. He was delighted. Then Martin fell in love with a music student. He married Coretta when he was 24 years old. He still continued his studies. In 1955, he was awarded the special degree called the Doctorate in Theology and became Dr. Martin Luther King. Now that he finished his studies, Martin became a minister of a church. As he planned, he preached and prayed about the unfair laws against the black people. He and thousands of others marched against these laws. People held up signs saying, "Jobs for all, march for jobs, end cigarette rules in public schools, jobs now, equal rights, we shall overcome, equality for all, civil rights." Eventually, one law was changed so that black children and white children could go to the same schools. Martin was pleased with this success, but there was more to be done. Then, not long afterwards, a woman called Rosa Parks was on her way home from work. She climbed onto a bus and sat down in the black section. When the bus was full, the driver ordered the black people to stand up so that the whites could sit down. Rosa Parks refused and the police arrested her. Rosa was found guilty and fined, even though she had done nothing wrong. This made many black people angry. Martin saw a chance to organize black people to change this law. So black people refused to use the buses. Some shared cars to get to work, and some people walked everywhere. The white people who owned the buses lost lots of money. Eventually, almost a year later, the law changed and black people could use the buses in the same way as whites could. Still, Martin continued to preach against bad laws. By 1957, the whole world had begun to take an interest in his work. He led many marches of black people fighting for better rights in America, but he had one law: no violence. He was arrested over 100 times for his part in the marches. By now, Coretta and Martin had 4 children, and the family moved back to town where Martin was born. Here, Martin preached at his father's church and enjoyed spending time with his family. He continued to organize protest marches because there was so much more to be done. Even though some laws had been changed, black people were still being treated unfairly. This made Martin very sad. Signs were "Help Wanted, White Only," "We cater to white trade only," "Colored Emergency Entrance," "Park White People Only," "Colored Entrance," "Waiting for Colored Only," "The Wash for White People Only." So Martin continued to organize marches. Sometimes he was arrested on these marches, and once he was locked in a dark cell by himself for 9 days. Eventually, even young children joined the protest. A large group of them marched against the laws stopping black people from using the restaurants, libraries, and toilets. The police ordered powerful hoses to be turned on them, and many were hurt. Some politicians were horrified at how events were turning out. So 90 days later, the laws were changed. Still, there was more to be done. In the summer of 1963, a huge number of people, both black and white, marched peacefully in Washington. It was on this day that Martin Luther King gave his famous speech. "I have a dream," he said, "that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will be judged, not by the color of their skin, but the content of their character." Around this time, Martin received a series of letters saying, "You will be killed." "I don't think I'm going to live to 40, he told Coretta, his wife. They were worried change was so slow. However, there was some good news as Martin was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. He felt encouraged and continued his difficult task. Daily News: Martin Luther King wins the Nobel Peace Prize. Martin then began his next campaign. Very few black people were registered to vote in the elections. "You must register to vote," he begged. "That way black people will be able to influence the government more." Martin and his supporters organized even more marches. Many times they were stopped by police, and many times violence erupted. People were like, "No colored votes, keep Alabama white, black out." And Martin Luther said, "Come on, brother, this is our right." By the time more white people were joining the marches, they realized that America needed to change. Some white people were attacked for joining the black marches. Sometimes policemen tried to stop the marchers by force. When police stood in front of them, they would just shout "Forward" and try to push him away, which usually caused violence. One day, Martin Luther King said, "We shall overcome." As a result of all the work done by Martin Luther King and his followers, the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. At last, black people had the right to vote. Martin Luther King was in the Capitol to witness this occasion. In 1968, Martin Luther King traveled with his friends to Memphis, Tennessee. Here, he spoke to 2,000 followers. He spoke peacefully. "I have a dream that the brotherhood of a man will become a reality." After a successful day, Martin was relaxing in the balcony of his hotel before dinner. Suddenly, someone shot him. His friends rushed him to the hospital, but the doctors could not save his life. Further facts: Martin Luther King Day. As Martin was such a powerful leader who achieved so much good, He is remembered every year with a public holiday in America. His life is celebrated on the third Monday in January. Martin Luther King Foundation. This organization aims through the education to continue Martin's fights against racism. As Martin said, "Together we must learn to live as brothers and sisters, or together we will be forced to perish as fools." Who killed Martin Luther King? James Earl Ray was found guilty of the murder of Martin Luther King. He was sentenced 99 years in prison. However, he claims to be innocent and has blamed another man. It is said that he has visited in prison by relatives of Martin Luther King who believe his story. So, some important dates in Martin Luther King's lifetime. 1929. Martin Luther King is born in Alatoona, Georgia, USA. 1948. Martin gains his first degree in sociology. 1951. Martin studies at Seminary College. 1953. Coretta Scott and Martin Luther King get married. 1954. Martin becomes pastor of a church in Alatoona. 1955. Boston University awards Martin his doctorate in theology. 1955. Martin organizes marches to highlight the case of Rosa Parks. 1958. Martin finishes his first book, Stride Towards Freedom. 1960. Martin moves to Ebenezer Baptist Church, where he preaches with his father. 1961 till 1963, Martin fights many campaigns to improve life for black people in USA. 1963, before a crowd of 200,000 people, Martin gives his "I Have a Dream" speech. 1964, Martin awarded Nobel Peace Prize. 1965, the Voting Rights Act is passed as a result of all the hard work of Martin and his supporters. 1968, Martin is shot dead on April 4th. He lived from 1929 to 1968.